Okay, Joe, you're drunk. Okay, you're drunk. Give me your keys. And I'm drunk, so I'll give you my keys. Okay, now we're both good to drive home. You been drinking tonight, sir?
No, officer. I just had a glass of dinner with my wife.
This is Plausibly Live.
Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever you do. A lot of things happening in the world today, most of them far beyond our control, you might say. So perhaps it's time we took a pause and thought about life. Thought about DUIs, blood alcohol levels, politics, money. Don't touch that dial, just try to hear me out for a little while. Forever, whatever it's worth, I have friends, dear friends, who in their lives have DUIs. Doesn't mean that I don't love them or respect them any less for that. I want to be clear about that. You have a DUI, doesn't mean I think less of you as a person. But for the life of me, I do not understand how this is the year 20 and 23. And not only do we still have DUIs, they're increasing. And people are still being hurt by them. And it's just utterly beyond my comprehension. I don't understand it. Washington State Legislature has made it clear that, well, they do have state legislative privilege, but they don't want to offend you with it. We'll get into all of that and more, hopefully, today on Plausibly Live, the Dave Bowman Show on internet radio. Hey, look, I'm probably tilting at windmills, and I get that. I understand that maybe I'm just the old man shouting at the clouds on my lawn. I don't know. I don't get it. If this offends you, I'm sorry that you're offended, but maybe you need to be offended. I don't know. For the life of me, I do not understand. Cannot understand. Absolutely no frame of reference at all as to why we continue to have DUI arrests, driving under the influence arrests. Look, there are a lot of people who argue about the death penalty, and one of the arguments that they make about the death penalty is that it's a deterrent, that it deters people from committing a capital crime because they might lose their own life. Statistics show otherwise. It's not a deterrent. And so when you translate that into terms of the DUI, what exactly is the deterrent for driving under the influence, for driving while drinking? When I first moved to Washington State in 1982, the limit was 0.10, and of course the drinking age was lower. I don't recall it being a huge issue back then. I do know that it happened back then. I have a very close family member who was hit by a drunk driver, injured significantly. And I remember being very angry about that at the time. But it was 0.10. And then I guess they decided somewhere on the way, after I left, they raised the drinking age to 21. And they lowered the DUI level from 0.10 to 0.008. Now, you'll notice that this did not deter drunk driving at all. It didn't slow it down at all. In fact, what it did was it made the numbers go up because all of a sudden those people who are 0.009 weren't being arrested anymore or charged. Now, the big push in the state legislature, keep in mind all of the problems that the state of Washington has. We have a huge homeless crisis. We have a huge housing crisis. We have, problems with our infrastructure, just like any other community or any other state. But the big push the last couple of days has been we need to lower the DUI rate from 0.008 to 0.005. 0.05, sorry. 0.05. I'll get it right. Now, the object here is, and what I keep being told by everyone who's in favor of this, including the governor, who even as I speak right now, is speaking on one of the biggest radio stations in the state about the need to lower it to 0.05. What I'm being told is that this will somehow or another deter DUI. It won't. The numbers tell me that it won't. And it doesn't address the real problem. In any case, in the past week, in the past 7 days, we have seen multiple accidents, including a fatality, although it wasn't DUI, on our highways around the Puget Sound region. Yesterday, we had a fatality, as I said. 1/3 of all fatalities in Washington state last year were the result of DUI. A couple of days ago, over in Monsanto, which doesn't mean anything to most of you folks, but it's a little bit southwest of Olympia, we had a wrong-way driver hit 2 people, hit 2 cars on Highway 12, DUI. And what's amazing about that is that in that area, Highway 12 is split. In other words, it's not like you're on the wrong side of the street like my grandfather used to drive on the wrong side of the street because he was a terrible driver. We're talking about like an interstate highway, 2 lanes over here, another road over there with 2 lanes going the other way. He was on the other lane. You got to work to do that, or be completely blottoed and not have any clue what the hell you're doing. A couple of days after that, my friend Jeff down in Ceres, he's that area, California, got hit by a drunk guy. Just wanted to go out to get some ice cream. Took his kids out to get some ice cream. Got rear-ended by a DUI driver. Could have been a lot worse. I mean, that's the truth. It could have been a lot worse. But it was bad enough as it was. We continue to see DUIs. We continue to see people who are willing to drive while drinking going up. The lowering of the intoxication level is no deterrent at all. It's not stopping anybody from going to drive drunk. It's not, the problem isn't the BAC level. The problem is, I don't know, people are stupid, I guess. There's no one who doesn't know. If you have a driver's license, you know that you can't drink and drive. You shouldn't drink and drive. You shouldn't do it. And yet people continue to do it. And it just blows my freaking mind. Every year up here, over the holidays, we get the hive patrols, HIV patrols, saturation patrols, I guess they call them in other places. And every year, the one day that people know you shouldn't drink and drive because there's a whole lot of cops on the road right now, the one day that they know it, what happens? Every year, we get more arrests for DUI, which tells you that the problem isn't that people go, oh my gosh, am I 0.08 yet? Or am I still 0.07? That's not the problem at all. It's not a deterrent. It's not causing people to go, oh, maybe I shouldn't drive. I don't know. It drives me nuts. We had a ruling last year here in Kitsap County where our county judges looked at the equipment that the State Patrol and the other law enforcement agencies were using to determine, the machine that you blow into, click. And they determined that machine is not compatible with state law. There's some very technical reasons why. I could explain it to you, but what you really need to know is that instead of averaging 4 measurements like it's supposed to, it's simply rounded up, and that was not compatible with state law. And so they threw out basically every DUI case here in the county. And of course, the problem is that most of the state uses that same machine. And so other counties looked at it and went, oh, it's not compatible with state law. And they threw it out. They threw them out. At the same time, we passed a law here in the state of Washington restricting the ability of the police to chase a suspect in a car. So, machine now is invalid in every state or every county of the state with the exception of one that has refused to acknowledge that ruling. And we said, we're not going to chase you anymore. What do you think happened? I can tell you what happened. Drinking and driving went up, and people started running from cops because they know they can't chase them. And conversely with that, accidents and fatalities increased. And yet, on the floor of the House in the State House in Olympia yesterday, we had a representative stand up and tell us that, well, that's not happening. We don't know what you're talking. You're just fear-mongering because the police can't chase a suspect anymore. And yet the police at the same time are running a report saying, this is what's happening. We've lowered the level from 0.1, 0.08, 0.05, or we're talking about going to 0.05. And I'm just enough of a cynic to start wondering if the real reason we're lowering this has anything to do with public safety at all, because the level isn't affecting public safety at all. The level is not determining whether it's not deterring people from going, I shouldn't drink and drive. I should stay home or stay at the bar or get an Uber or whatever. It's not deterring anything. So what's it going to take to do that deterrence? Is it really about, is this lowering of the levels really about public safety, or is it about revenue enhancement? If the level's lower, we can arrest more people because we know we're not stopping them from doing it. We know by the numbers that it's going up. We know by the numbers, by the very fact that it's happening. We know this. But we can make more money. Trial lawyers can make more money. DUI lawyers who advertise on every highway in this state, there are signs saying 1-800-DUI arrest. Call us, we'll get you off. Same in California, by the way. It's money to be made. And because there's money to be made, these folks are pushing to make it more easy, I think, to make more money in it rather than to actually solve the problem. At the same time, we're being told that gun violence is a problem. We got to solve gun violence. And the only way to do that is to ban guns. Do you follow their logic here? Because I don't. I mean, I see what they're saying. Gun violence, 781 deaths in 2019. That's the last year figures are fully available for. So we got to ban guns. At the same time, we had a significant number of accidents and incidents caused by drunk drivers. But we're not talking about banning anything there. We're just talking about lowering the level after the fact. You have a crash, you get pulled over, whatever. You've already done it. Now what's your level? Of those 781 gun deaths, though, it's not completely clear from the numbers what it includes, but at least 77% of those deaths are suicides. In other words, nobody else was hurt in the accident. So less than 200 of those deaths are gun violence. At the same time, there were 172 deaths on our highways. At the same time, 1/3 of all traffic fatalities were, in fact, caused by DUI. And yet, our focus is on lowering the DUI level to 0.05. 0.5. I don't get it. I don't. There's no move, of course, to stop not pursuing suspects and the likes of that. The problem to me seems to be with us, we the drivers of this state, and of course of the nation. I don't get it. I don't understand it. 0.05. These numbers screw me. 0.05 is the proposed level. Great. How is that going to deter anybody from drinking and driving? They're already not being deterred at 0.08. They weren't deterred at 0.10. It's not going to lower the accident rate. All it's going to do is the after effect is going to make it more expensive, which means lawyers and politicians are going to make money. What can we do to actually stop DUIs? What's the action that's going to have to be taken to actually stop people from drinking and driving? Because that's the problem. It isn't that, well, the level's too high. The problem is, the problem is that the levels don't mean anything because they vary from person to person. We've talked about this in the past. I'm a big guy. I can drink more than my wife and not be affected by it. But I'm still not going to get in a car. And yet, this is the focus that we have. I'm pleading with you, folks. I don't know how else to say it. The only way we're going to stop DUI is if we stop drinking and driving. The levels aren't going to make any difference because there's going to be enough lawyers and enough laws and enough loopholes and enough cases and enough whatever to clog it up for years. It's not going to bring back the dead. It's not going to uninjure the injured. It's not going to restore the property that was destroyed. If we don't stop drinking and driving ourselves, it's not going to be stopped. These politicians have convinced themselves that they can solve it by lowering the blood alcohol content level to 0.05. Guarantee you, we'll be sitting here a year or 2 years from now talking about how DUI arrests are up. Makes sense in a weird, stupid kind of way. People, please, for the love of God, stop drinking and driving. You almost killed one of my best friends the other day. I'm not real happy about it.
Hi, this is Justine, bringing you late night talk for those that go to bed early. Listen to my podcast, What's Justine Thinking, every Wednesday and Friday on Anchor and Spotify.
Not even sure how to say this, just a little inside baseball. I had to record that segment about DUI, 4 or 5 times. Which I don't like to do because this is supposed to be a live show, Plausibly Live. It's live radio, just on demand. It's just like me sitting in the studios at KFIV talking about what's on my mind. And I found myself getting so frustrated, so irritated. Jeff had his kids in his car with him, and this guy just hit him from behind, and it could have been so much worse. Thank God it wasn't. I'm just tired of it. We used to do those anti-DUI shows on the air. I loved those shows. I really did. Those were fun shows. They were fun, and they were pointed. And after Marshall, our sometimes producer, lost his brother in a DUI accident, they became even more poignant and more important, I thought. And it was pretty obvious. I can't operate a radio show at a level that was less than the legal limit. There's no way I could operate a car. And yet people still do it. Anyway, I had to record that 4 or 5 times because I kept getting off on tangents. And I almost did on that one too, but I'm not going to do it again. So here we are. The Washington State Legislature, also last week, we talked about this legislative privilege idea, that the legislators could claim legislative privilege. So, in the most idiotic government thing of all times, you'll be happy to know that the Washington State Legislature has solved, quote unquote, the legislative privilege problem. They still maintain that legislative privilege actually exists. It does not. It is not in the law. As I said the other day, it is a bad interpretation. It is a misinterpretation. It is an intentional creation that they are using to try to justify this. It's complete and total BS. But you'll be happy to know that they have acknowledged now that rather than just assuming the privilege is in place, when a given legislator is hit with a FOA request and material is desired, they have decided that from now on, instead of just assuming legislative privileges in place, which is what the press offices would do, now the legislator has to actually physically, verbally, or written, I guess, say that they don't want legislative privilege. Did you follow me here? All right, let's say that I'm a legislator and I've got some communications, electronic emails, text, whatever, regarding something, and you want to know what your legislator, me, said about this particular issue, and so you request those documents. In the past, my press office would just say, nope, legislative privilege, you can't have them. Which is a complete BS interpretation of Washington state law, which very clearly says the people have a right to know, and we do not give up that right to know. But now, because you're upset about this, from now on, my press officer will say to me, Dave, do you wish to exercise legislative privilege on this? Now, at that point, I have three options. Option number one, I can say, yes, I wish to. In which case, I have to write it down. I've put in writing, I'm exercising legislative privilege, hand it back to them, blah, blah, blah. I could say, no, I don't choose to, in which case my press officer will go, okay, fine, go off and release it. Or there's a third option. Probably already see it, right? The third option is I could go, hey, how about those Mariners? How about those mountains out there? How about this weather we're having? Just completely ignore the question. Completely as if I never heard it in my life. And if I do that, the press officer goes, oh, he's busy. But he hasn't said that he doesn't want to, so I guess he does. So 2/3 of the answers will default back to, yes, I want it. And we're back right where we started again, which is the Democrat Congress in Olympia has decided that they can misinterpret state law, deny the sovereignty of the people, ignore the will of the people, and continue on their way. And you wonder why you just pull your hair out, folks. I mean, it's like legislators, politicians in general, are not known for being upfront, honest about things. They're just not. And they never will be. And the reason is because they're better than you. They think they're better than you. They forget that they work for you, not the other way around. And because of that, they think that they have certain privileges and they treat you like child. I mean, there are things I don't tell Ben, right? Ben doesn't need to know about certain things. Even though they directly affect him, he doesn't really need to know about them because I don't want him worrying about them. Well, these legislators think that they're your parent. They think that they know better than you about what you should and shouldn't know. And because of that, they treat you like a child. They don't tell you these things. And now they've fixed that problem that actually breaks state law and said, no, we won't just assume anymore. Well, we will, but only under certain conditions, which are all of them, which means they still don't have to tell you. So I guess the good news is they heard the people's complaints. They heard they read the editorials in the Seattle Times and the Tacoma News Tribune, and they got the feeling that people were a little upset about this, and so they said, well, we better do something. We better do something that won't actually do anything, but it'll make them think that we did. So as long as they think that we look like we're trying to do something about it, that's what's important, right? And at the end of the day, we'll take care of it. Off we will go. I don't know, man. Some days you just want to pull your hair out. Some days I think I find myself just laughing because it's all you can do. You can't take these people seriously anymore. And yet they want to be taken seriously. They're in charge, they're the leaders. We elected them to leadership. So they must know everything that there is to know. Well, I don't know, man. It's going to be the fall. It's going to be the fall of Western civilization. It's going to be just like it was the fall of Eastern civilization when the Roman Empire fell. I mean, it was this idea of corrupt politicians is nothing new. It's nothing that we haven't seen before. What we haven't seen before is the politicization and the polarization of the nation behind it. So that if my politician, who I elected, who I voted for, does something wrong, well, you're just making that up. And if your politician does something wrong, then my accusations of him or her doing wrong, are just political infighting. That's all it is. And as long as we're in that mode, I don't think we're going to get very far. I really don't. It's nothing new, I suppose, but at the same time, it's certainly not moving forward, is it? It's certainly not going to cure cancer, and it's certainly not going to solve our economic problems. But it makes people feel like they're doing something. And that's the most important thing for a politician. Activity is their substitute for achievement. We lower the DUI rate from 0.08 to 0.05. It won't change anything. We'll have we're still going to have DUI accidents, still going to have more DUI arrests. But by golly, it'll make them feel like they've done something. And if we want to hear their debates about it, if we want to know what they said about it behind closed doors, in email or written communications, which the law says we can have, well, they did something about the fact that we might think that they don't need to, but they didn't really do anything. Which is politics in a nutshell, isn't it? Look important, sound important, but really, what did you actually accomplish? Nothing.